the surgeon of the silent plains. The sun was a mere whisper against the horizon, casting long shadows across the vast plains as I rode into the town of Redstone Ridge. The silhouette of the looming mountain range seemed to beckon travelers like me into its secretive embrace. The town itself appeared as a humble gathering of wooden structures and dirt roads, characteristic of most settlements in this part of the Wild West. Now, Redstone Ridge was known to be a crossroads of sorts. Miners, cattle herders, and opportunists of all kinds passed through, looking for a night's rest, a drink, or perhaps a gamble on a fleeting dream. It was here that the traveling surgeon had found his prey. Rumors swirled of the talented surgeon who roamed from town to town, offering his services to the frontier folk. He had a wagon, painted in bright colors and adorned with medical symbols. It stood out in this rustic landscape, almost like a beacon of hope for the sick and the injured. A sign that read, Dr. Nathaniel Harrow, medical aid and surgical expertise, hung prominently on its side. As the story goes, on one fateful evening, a young woman named Clara ventured to his wagon. Her mother had been ailing with a persistent cough, and they'd heard of Dr. Harrow's miraculous treatments. The wagon, which doubled as his operating room, was meticulously organized. Shelves lined with vials of various concoctions, gleaming surgical tools, and a reclining chair sat in the middle, where patients would be treated. The good doctor, a man of middle age with slicked back hair and a charming demeanor, welcomed Clara with open arms. He spoke with a soft, reassuring voice, laced with a hint of an Eastern accent. Bostonian, some reckoned.
Worry not, my dear.
He'd cooed.
I have just the remedy for your mother, but first I must prepare it. Please step inside and make yourself comfortable.
Clara hesitated for a moment, but then, thinking of her ailing mother, she stepped into the wagon. It was the last time she was seen alive. Back in the saloon, as I removed my dust-coated hat and ordered a stiff drink, hushed conversations about Clara's disappearance filled the air. Eyes darted around suspiciously, and mistrust seemed to hang heavy. The once inviting town now had an unsettling undertone, like a storm brewing on a summer's day. A dense fog began to creep in from the outskirts, making the wooden facades of the buildings appear like ghostly apparitions. It felt as though nature itself mourned the loss and echoed the town's collective anxiety. The wind whispered through the cracks and crevices, carrying with it both the chill of the night and a cautionary tale of the dangers that lurked in the seemingly safe havens of the Wild West. I tightened the grip on my drink, my eyes scanning the room, knowing that my hunt for Dr. Nathaniel Harrow had only just begun. The weight of the amulet around my neck seemed heavier than usual, and I felt a sense of purpose. This was a mission of justice, and the spirits of the land were with me. The saloon's doors creaked as I pushed them open, announcing my entrance into the dimly lit room. The soft glow of oil lamps illuminated a scene typical of frontier life. Card games in progress, laughter, a piano playing a jaunty tune, and the bartender wiping down mugs with a rag. But as I stepped in, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations lulled, and all eyes turned to size up the newcomer. The floorboards groaned under my boots as I made my way to the bar, each step deliberate and confident. I could feel the weight of their gaze examining every inch of me, the worn leather of my jacket, the Comanche patterns sewn onto my pants, and the feathers braided into my hair. But what drew the most attention was the intricate amulet hanging proudly around my neck. A blend of both cowboy and Comanche beliefs, symbolizing unity, protection, and spiritual guidance. A burly man at the end of the bar, with a beard as wild as the tales of the West, leaned over to his companion and muttered,
"That's him, that's Shadowhawk."
Murmurs of recognition rippled through the room. The bartender, a stout man with graying hair and a face weathered from years of frontier life, met my gaze and nodded slightly.
"What'll it be, Shadowhawk?"
He asked, a hint of reverence in his voice.
"Whiskey."
I replied curtly, placing a coin on the counter. As he poured, I took a moment to scan the room. Here and there, I caught snippets of whispered conversations, stories of my hunts, of the supernatural evils I had faced, of the bridge I walked between two worlds. A young woman, looking no older than 20, approached with a mix of hesitation and determination.
Mr. Shadowhawk,
She began, her voice trembling slightly.
my sister, she's missing. They say you can find people. Can you help me?
I turned to look at her, my eyes meeting hers. Behind the fear, I saw a burning hope. In the Wild West, where danger lurked around every corner, hope was sometimes all people had. Placing my glass down, I nodded.
Tell me everything.
And as the piano resumed its melody and the conversations picked up once more, I, Jake Shadowhawk Mitchell, began my next hunt, knowing that in this town of secrets and shadows, the spirits of the land would guide my path. The young woman's plea still echoed in my ears as I settled into a corner table, nursing my whiskey. The saloon, a hub for news and gossip from neighboring settlements, was an ideal place to gather information. Stories flowed as freely as the drinks, and in these tales, one could find hints of truth. I leaned back, allowing the hum of conversations to wash over me. Two men, rugged from life on the frontier, whispered intently to each other at the adjacent table. One, with a sunburnt face and a hat worn down by the elements, leaned in, voice barely audible over the piano's gentle melody.
Another girl's gone missing up north in Cedar Hollow. That's the third this month.
His companion, an older man with eager eyes, frowned.
You reckon it's the wild animals? Or maybe the natives?
The first man shook his head, a grave expression darkening his features.
No, this ain't the work of beasts or tribes. Word is, it's that traveling surgeon. He's been making rounds, offering his services to the sick. But wherever he goes, someone ends up missing.
The older man scoffed.
Dr. Harrow? That can't be. My cousin got treated by him for a nasty wound. Said he was a godsend.
Aye,
The first man replied.
but there's stories, lad. Stories of girls being lured into his wagon, never to be seen again. They say there's something unnatural about him, that he's got dark dealings.
My interest was piqued. Dr. Harrow, the name I'd heard linked to Clara's disappearance, was now connected to other vanishings. The pieces were starting to come together, forming a grim picture. Finishing my drink, I approached the two men.
Pardon the intrusion,
I began, fixing them with a steely gaze.
but I couldn't help overhearing. I'm looking into these disappearances. Do you have more details about this Dr. Harrow?
The older man, taken aback by my forthrightness but recognizing my reputation, replied cautiously,
Just rumors, Shadowhawk. But they say he has a hideout, somewhere up in the mountains. No one knows for sure where, but folks have seen his wagon heading up the trails at odd hours.
I nodded, committing the information to memory.
I appreciate your help.
Offering a tip of my hat, I left the saloon, my resolve firming with every step. Outside, the fog had thickened, casting an ethereal glow under the moonlight. I made my way to the stables where my trusty steed awaited. Saddling up, I felt the weight of the task ahead. But the spirits of the land, the whispers of the wind, and the guidance of my amulet would lead the way. Dr. Nathaniel Harrow was a puzzle waiting to be unraveled, a shadow in a world of mysteries. And as the night deepened, I was determined to uncover the truth and bring an end to the fear gripping these frontier towns. As dawn's first light brushed the vast horizon, I found myself on the outskirts of Cedar Hollow, following a trail that led away from the main path. The land here was wilder, untouched by the hands of settlers, with only the cries of distant birds to break the silence. My senses, honed by years of tracking, felt the lingering traces of recent activity. After a few hours of steady riding, I came upon a clearing where the remnants of a campsite lay scattered. The ashes of a doused fire pit, a toppled pot, and a few discarded belongings painted a scene of a hasty departure. but what caught my attention was a leather medical bag, discarded carelessly among the underbrush. Cautiously, I approached and opened it. Inside was an array of surgical tools, each meticulously crafted and disturbingly stained with fresh blood. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I rummaged further, discovering a small, neatly tied bundle. Unwrapping it, I was met with a lock of golden hair, eerily reminiscent of Clara's, the young woman from Redstone Ridge. My heart sank, and a deep-seated anger began to boil within me. Sitting back on my heels, I took a moment to absorb the gravity of the find. The rumors, the whispers, the fear, it all crystallized into a grim reality. Dr. Nathaniel Harrow wasn't just a medical professional, he was a predator. The untouched wilderness around me seemed to echo with the silent screams of his victims. Determined to unearth more clues, I scoured the campsite. Amid the chaos, I found a small journal, its pages filled with neat handwriting. Flipping it open, I was met with detailed accounts of surgeries, remedies, and disturbingly personal observations about the women he encountered. Entries described their beauty, their innocence, and in some cases, the thrill of the hunt. One entry stood out.
Tonight, the stars align. The spirit demands another. She has golden locks, eyes filled with dreams. Perfect.
Closing the journal, a chilling realization washed over me. Dr. Harrow wasn't just committing these heinous acts out of mere depravity. There was a ritualistic, perhaps supernatural element to his actions. Gathering the evidence, I set the campsite aflame, letting the rising smoke signal an end to this chapter of horror. But I knew my task was far from over. The surgeon's trail beckoned, and with renewed determination, I saddled up, ready to confront the darkness and bring an end to Dr. Harrow's reign of terror. As I rode deeper into the wilderness, the weight of the amulet around my neck seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. The spirits were with me, guiding me, as I ventured further into the heart of the mystery, prepared to face the sinister force that lurked in the shadows of the Wild West. The vast plains of Cedar Hollow lay stretched before me, a seemingly endless expanse dotted with dense groves and rocky outcrops. I began my pursuit of Dr. Harrow, relying on my unique blend of cowboy instincts and Comanche training. The trail he left behind was intricate and challenging, signs of a man accustomed to evasion. As the hours wore on, the trail twisted and turned unpredictably. At times, it would lead to a dense thicket, forcing me to dismount and proceed on foot, only to emerge into another clearing with no discernible tracks. It became evident that Harrow was laying false trails, hoping to throw off any pursuers. But the land, with all its secrets, spoke to me. My Comanche training taught me to listen, to the rustling of the leaves, the patterns of the birds, the whispers of the wind. Every element of nature held clues, and I was attuned to their subtle messages. While the misleading paths proved challenging, what I discovered along the way was even more distressing. Hidden among the underbrush, I stumbled upon makeshift graves, marked only by small mounds of earth and stones. A chilling reminder of Harrow's victims. Nearby, personal trinkets lay scattered. A handcrafted necklace, a faded photograph, a dainty shoe. Each item was a haunting testament to a life taken too soon. As dusk approached, the vast landscape was bathed in a muted glow, casting long, darkening shadows. My amulet, which had been a steady presence throughout my journey, began to grow warm against my skin. I felt a palpable shift in the air, a sensation of being watched yet not threatened. Heeding the call of the amulet, I found a secluded spot and sat cross-legged on the ground, allowing myself to slip into a deep, meditative state. The boundaries between the physical and spiritual realms began to blur, and before long, I was greeted by the ethereal presence of a native spirit. This spirit, taking the form of an aged Comanche shaman, regarded me with wise, penetrating eyes.
"Seeker of justice,
He intoned, his voice echoing like a distant wind.
beware the one you hunt. He is bound by ancient pacts and dark rituals. He is not merely a man, but a vessel for a power far older and more sinister.
I replied, seeking clarity.
Guide me, wise spirit. How do I confront such a force? What drives him?
The shaman's form shimmered.
His soul is bound to an ancient entity, one that demands sacrifices. Each life he takes strengthens this bond, but remember, every bond has its breaking point. Your amulet combined with your resolve can sever this tie.
Before I could inquire further, the vision began to fade, the shaman's final words echoing.
Trust the land, trust your spirit, and seek the place where moonlight meets the stone.
Returning to consciousness, I felt rejuvenated, the spirit's guidance illuminating my path forward. With renewed vigor, I continued my pursuit, the cryptic clue, where moonlight meets the stone etched in my mind. As night deepened, I reached a towering cliff face, its surface bathed in the silvery glow of the moon. At its base, I discovered a narrow entrance to a cave, the place where moonlight met the stone. A faint light emanated from within, accompanied by the muffled sounds of a ritual in progress. Drawing my revolver, and with the amulet's warmth as my shield, I ventured deeper into the heart of darkness, ready to confront the malevolent force that was Dr. Nathaniel Harrow. Every fiber of my being was focused on the looming confrontation, a battle not just of man against man, but of ancient spirits, legacies, and the very essence of the Wild West. The cave's interior was an eerie juxtaposition of natural rock formations and deliberate human touch. Walls lined with carvings of ritualistic symbols shimmered in the flickering torchlight. As I ventured deeper, the stifling scent of incense grew stronger, and the low hum of chanting grew louder. Soon, I entered a vast chamber where Dr. Nathaniel Harrow stood, surrounded by an intricate circle of runes and candles. He was engrossed in a ritual, with an ancient leather book in one hand and a blood-stained dagger in the other. At the circle's center lay a dead, innocent young woman, her golden locks spread out, eerily reminiscent of the one I had found earlier. Summoning all my courage, I yelled,
Harrow, this ends now.
Startled, he turned, his eyes not those of the composed doctor, but of a trapped animal, filled with a cold blackness, fear, and desperation.
You don't understand, Shadowhawk.
He rasped.
It's not me, it's her.
Before I could react, the cave echoed with an otherworldly scream, and a spectral figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman, her ethereal form emanating anguish and rage. She hovered protectively over Harrow, her gaze fixed on me. Through the connection with my amulet, I could feel the spirit's tormented emotions and its tragic story. The amulet told me this was the spirit of Eliza, once married to a surgeon much like Harrow. In a fit of jealousy and heartbreak over her husband's infidelity, she had cursed him and all those of his profession. Her spirit was bound to the realm of the living, possessing surgeons and compelling them to commit heinous acts. With each act, her rage grew, moving from one host to the next. Since surgeons were around death often, her spirit could easily infect a poor soul. Harrow, trembling, spoke up.
Every night, she comes, forcing my hand, taking control. I tried to resist, tried to flee, but there's no escape.
Torn between sympathy for Harrow and the need for justice, I realized that confronting Eliza's spirit was the only way to end this cycle of terror. Holding out my amulet, I began to chant a Comanche ritual of release, calling upon the spirits of the land to aid me. The cave trembled as the realms of the living and the dead clashed. Eliza's spirit, racked with pain and anger, lunged at me. But the amulet's glow held her at bay, illuminating the chamber with a blinding light.
Eliza,
I implored, channeling all my spiritual energy.
your pain is understood, but this cycle of revenge must end. Find peace and release this soul from your grasp.
The battle of wills intensified, but slowly, the spirit's rage began to wane. The anguish in her eyes was replaced by a dawning realization and eventually a mournful acceptance. With one final, sorrowful glance at Harrow, she dissipated, her spectral form vanishing like mist at dawn. The chamber grew silent, the weight of centuries of torment lifting. Harrow, freed from the spirit's grasp, collapsed in exhaustion. As he regained his composure, he looked at me, eyes filled with gratitude and remorse.
I never wanted this.
He whispered.
Thank you.
I nodded, understanding the complexity of his torment.
You must atone, Harrow. Use your skills for good and remember the souls who were lost.
Exiting the cave, the first rays of dawn painted the horizon. A new day beckoned, promising hope and redemption. The spirit of Eliza was finally at peace, and the towns of the Wild West could once again breathe easy, knowing that the sinister surgeon's reign of terror had come to an end. The morning sun stretched its golden fingers across the landscape, washing away the remnants of the night's darkness. In the quiet stillness, the cave's entrance, previously a symbol of terror, now felt like a passage to closure and redemption. Dr. Nathaniel Harrow, no longer under the spectral shadow of the vengeful spirit, stood solemnly beside me. His face, etched with guilt and sorrow, was that of a man confronting the depth of his actions. The girl from the cave, an innocent life caught in this tragic web, lay peacefully wrapped in a shroud we had fashioned.
We must give her a proper burial.
I said quietly.
A ceremonial farewell acknowledging both our worlds.
Harrow nodded, his voice choked with emotion.
She deserves peace, a peace I failed to give her in life.
Together, we chose a serene spot near a grove of whispering trees. Drawing upon my Comanche heritage, I guided Harrow in the rituals of the earth, ensuring her spirit would find its way to the ancestors. As we chanted and sang, a gentle wind rustled the leaves as if nature itself mourned the loss and joined our homage. Once the ceremony was complete, Harrow, visibly shaken, whispered,
Thank you, Shadowhawk. This journey has shown me the depth of my transgressions, but also the path to redemption.
Gazing at the newly formed burial mound, I replied,
It's a long road ahead, Harrow. Use your skills for healing. Give back to the communities you've wronged and remember her. In honoring her memory, you'll find your own redemption.
A heavy silence settled between us, broken only by the distant calls of birds greeting the day. Preparing to leave, I mounted my horse, casting one last look at the surgeon-turned-penitent.
Redemption is a journey, not a destination.
I called out.
Honor her memory and let it guide you.
Harrow nodded, his gaze fixed on the burial mound, a symbol of his commitment to change. As I rode away, the vast landscapes of the Wild West unfurled before me. The tales of Jake Shadowhawk Mitchell were far from over. Each horizon held a story, a challenge, a mystery. But this chapter, a tale of vengeance, redemption, and the thin line between man and monster, would forever remain etched in my soul. With every gallop, I carried forward the memories of the lost and the hope for a better tomorrow, a guardian spirit in the ever-evolving tapestry of the wild, magical western frontier.
Epilogue. Possession, the act of a spirit or entity taking control of a living being, is a concept deeply rooted in the beliefs and traditions of many cultures across the world. For the Native American tribes, these beliefs were interwoven with their reverence for the natural world, the spirits that inhabited it, and the delicate balance that maintained harmony between realms. The Native Americans believed that spirits existed everywhere, in the trees, rocks, rivers, animals, and the air. While many of these spirits were benevolent, providing guidance and protection, others harbored resentment or malevolence, especially if they were wronged or disturbed. For these spirits, possessing a human was a way to manifest their will or exact revenge in the physical realm. Such possessions weren't always seen as negative. In some cases, they allowed the host to communicate with the spirit world, receive prophecies, or heal the sick. The shaman, or medicine man of a tribe, would often intentionally invoke spirits, seeking their guidance and power to aid his people. But in darker times, when malevolent entities took control, the effects could be catastrophic, driving individuals to madness or forcing them to commit heinous acts against their will, much like the tragic tale of Dr. Harrow. Beyond the vast plains and dense forests of Native America, similar beliefs in possession resonate across the globe. In Africa, the practice of Vodun, often referred to as voodoo, holds that spirits or lower can mount or ride a person, influencing their actions and thoughts. These possessions can be a cause for celebration, with dancing and rituals, or a reason for exorcism if the spirit is malicious. In Asia, particularly within Hinduism, it's believed that certain deities or spirits, when angered or disrespected, can possess individuals. These possessions, often marked by erratic behavior or immense strength, require elaborate rituals to appease the spirit and free the afflicted individual. Europe, too, isn't a stranger to these beliefs. Historical records abound with tales of demonic possessions, where individuals displayed supernatural abilities, spoke in tongues, or showed aversions to religious symbols. The Catholic Church even developed rites of exorcism, ceremonies to expel malevolent entities from the possessed. The Middle East, with its rich tapestry of history and tradition, speaks of jinn, supernatural entities made of smokeless fire. While many jinn are neutral or good, others, especially the Ifrit, are malevolent and known to possess or bewitch humans, leading them astray. Looking at these tales and beliefs from a broader perspective, it's clear that the idea of possession taps into a primal human fear, the loss of control. Whether it's the Native American spirits of the land, the Loa of Africa, the demons of Europe, or the jinn of the Middle East, cultures worldwide grapple with the idea that external entities can rob us of our agency. The tale of Jake Shadowhawk Mitchell and Dr. Nathaniel Harrow is but one story in this vast mosaic of shared human experience. Through these narratives, cultures attempt to understand the unknown, find explanations for inexplicable behaviors, and most importantly, seek ways to regain control. In the end, these tales of possession underscore a universal truth. While the external world and its myriad spirits and forces are vast and powerful, the human spirit's resilience, guided by knowledge, understanding, and faith, remains an indomitable force capable of confronting and overcoming even the darkest of possessions.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Quantum Dispatches, and stay tuned next week for another thrilling adventure. Thank you for listening.